A couple weeks ago, we reported on something. We called it the Great Retreat. So what we're seeing is we've seen this united front on this climate change agenda, settle science. We have to reshape society, zero carbon, shut down the farms. Something broke. This united front is fractured. And we saw people like Rishi Sunak, the PM, the Prime Minister of the UK. We saw Bill Gates. They're turning around. Bill Gates is saying we can't use brute force anymore. Rishi Sunak has said, "Hey, we're good on the goals. Let's just slow down this transition a little bit." So at least in their languaging, which we'll take, at least in their languaging, they're saying, "Let's slow this down a little bit." I don't know if people are going to be cool with this. Yeah. But now let's look at one of the really, arguably the front organization, publicly front-facing organization that's pushing a lot of this agenda, this transition. That's the World Economic Forum. The World Economic Forum has something called the Young Global Leaders Program. I'll just let them talk about it. Listen to this clip.
All right.
They come out being thought leaders, great organizational leaders.
Our young global leaders are selected by the top editors-in-chief around the world.
My commitment will be to add value. We'll be part of the Young Leaders Initiative.
Mrs. Merkel, Tony Blair, they were all, even President Putin, they were all young global leaders before.
Prime Minister of Ireland, Leo Varadkar.
Very proud to say that His Highness is also a young global leader of the World Economic Forum.
The leader of the UK right now, David Cameron, was named a young global leader in 2006.
Ramuka Bakadze, the Prime Minister of Georgia and a young global leader.
Haakon is the Crown Prince of Norway. He's also a member of our Young Global Leaders alumni community.
President Calderon, you had been selected in 1997 as a global leader for tomorrow.
You have already in 1993 been here for the first time as a global leader for tomorrow.
Monsieur De Croo, vous avez été Young Global Leader du Forum économique mondial. Vous avez récemment fait une visioconférence avec Klaus Schwab.
After the birthday, I'm out of Young Global Leader of Davos. I finished because over 40 is finished.
I'd like to explore a little bit what it's like to be a new young global leader.
Not young anymore.
Gavin Newsom, the young, energetic, innovative mayor of San Francisco. He is also among those who are the young global leaders here at Davos this year.
So what we're
it's really
seeing
hard
is
to stomach, isn't it? And as I sit here thinking, boy, how has the WEF made the world a better place over the last 20 or 30 years? I mean, I think if you traveled anywhere in this country around the world, it'd say we've gone backward. We're in a terrible place in the world, and yet these people hold themselves up. Look at the great job we're doing. Yeah, we are looking at it. I almost went profanity there. I'll hold it back.
And you can see throughout the years, there's been a lot of people there. And that video goes on for a very long time. If anybody wants to watch that, they can get the link for that. So this is a methodical process. This isn't some vestigial, I'm a young global leader, so I get a ribbon in the mail. This is a methodical process where they find these people, they hone them, and then they become distributed throughout power centers, governments, corporations throughout the world. They're WEF vetted people that then carry out these agendas. And you can see there, Mayor of San Francisco at that time, Gavin Newsom, Governor of California. Some say that he may be making a run for president. He hasn't announced anything yet, but think about that if he does become in the running. He just visited Xi Jinping in China. He's taken this really liking to this international conversations with leaders. I mean, he's the governor of California. You'd have a WEF hand-vetted, picked person by Klaus Schwab himself running for the U.S. president. So just something to keep in mind on that one. But the Young Global Leaders Program actually has its own website, so it's no secret. And you can go under the vision and mission here, and you start to read between the lines. But what it says is, we are united by the belief that today's pressing problems present an opportunity to build a better future across sectors and boundaries. So there's that build back better. You know, our problems create opportunities, order, kind of like a nice new way to say order out of chaos. But then it goes on to say that's Klaus Schwab, because he started this program. His vision was to create a proactive multi-stakeholder community of the world's next generation leaders to inform and influence decision-making and mobilize transformation. So remember, Klaus Schwab is famous for saying a lot of things, but saying COVID presented the greatest opportunity for this rapid transition of society, where the rest of us said, wow, this was a disaster. he saw gold that he could weave into the fourth industrial revolution. So how does the WWF do this? What are the key pillars of what they're doing? Well, one of them is net zero. So we're going to go right from their own website. This is said about the cities, a net zero carbon future for cities. So in the WWF's program, basically science is settled. We're rapidly shifting this societies to net zero. So farmers in Netherlands, you're out. We're going to buy your farms. You're done. Cow farts are bad. Shutting down, how you heat your homes. You can't do that now. There's all of that. We're rapidly shifting society. But unfortunately, there's actually a conversation. The science is not settled, and the scientific community is reacting and standing up. This is a headline just recently. The era of unquestioning and unchallenged climate change claims is over. And in this article, there's several studies that just came out. One of them, published in the journal Climate, is this one here. It's an extensive study, the detection and attribution of Northern Hemisphere land surface warming from 1850 to 2018. So that's basically the carbonized time of humanity here. In terms of human and natural forces, so looking at both human and natural forces, and they conclude this: the scientific community is not yet in a position to confidently establish whether the warming since 1850 is mostly human-caused, mostly natural, or some combination.
Wow, you sure wouldn't know it if you were watching the news around here on the planet Earth. You'd think they had it nailed to the wall.
Or the rapid transitions around you. If you're in America, you're seeing headlines like this: President Biden pitches strict emissions rules to make most cars electric by 2032. So not really big conversation. We're just moving all your cars to electric, and we're going to do it as fast as possible.
Because that'll be cheap and everyone can afford that.
Exactly, and don't worry about those rare earth minerals. We'll find a way to get them, even though they're in the slave labor is getting the cobalt in Africa. And so, but what about the technology? Well, this is an article out of the Telegraph recently. It really turned some heads. Electric cars risk becoming uninsurable. So when you really talk about when the rubber hits the road, the insurance companies, they're the ones that are going to lose. Remember, we saw that with the actuaries from the insurance companies when it came to vaccine injury. They were the ones sounding the alarm internally because they have to foot the bill for this. So the insurance companies is a really good place to look to see how these policies are, how these policies are looking. And the window dressing looks great, but when it really comes down to it, how's it looking? And so let's look in this article. It says, Jonathan Hewitt, chief executive of Thatcham Research, the motor insurer's automotive research center, said a lack of insight and understanding about the cost of repairing damaged electric car batteries was pushing up premiums and resulting in some providers declining to provide coverage altogether. Mr. Hewitt said the challenge is that we have no way of understanding whether the battery has been compromised or damaged in any way. The threat of a thermal runaway means that a catastrophic fire can take place if the cells of the battery have been damaged in a collision. The London Fire Brigade has warned that fires involving lithium batteries are the fastest growing fire risk in London after it was called out to 87 e-bike and 29 e-scooter fires in 2022. Paris's transport operator withdrew 149 electric buses from operation last year after 2 ignited on separate occasions. So we've all seen these Tesla batteries, these electric batteries blow up in these cars. And what these insurers are saying is, look, if there's a fender bender, a little collision, we have no way of really knowing if that battery's been compromised. And this thermal runaway is a very real threat, whether it's parked in someone's garage or if it's parked in a car park where there's thousands of cars around them. If this thing goes up, there's real damage that these insurers are on the hook for. So they're saying, look, some of these insurance companies are saying, no more. We're not going to insure these things.
Well, it's such an interesting thought, right? You could have a fender bender where it just looks like some metal or plastic got buckled or bent, and then they fix that. But you have no idea that inside you've caused some sort of rupture in the battery. I mean, it's a really good point. How do you find that out? What's going on internally? It's like, a giant solid block of battery. And then, what does it say? Runaway meltdown, or how they describe that?
A threat of thermal runaway. That's what that's called.
Thermal runaway. That sounds scary.
Yeah, exactly. So let's move on now. So we have the WEF. There's another kind of controversial idea. It's a universal basic income. And in America, that's one of the first times we heard that on a large scale was Andrew Yang's presidential run in 2020.
Yeah.
And he really brought that idea to the forefront. That was one of the pillars that he ran on, was trying to implement that in the United States. One of the headlines here, Andrew Yang's idea of universal basic income earned him fans, but can he win votes? Obviously, he did not. But this is something the WEF has championed all the way back to 2017. We saw headlines like this on their website, why we should all have a basic income. And this is what Canada, remember Justin Trudeau, young global leader, accolades. This is what Canada is now really considering. We have a headline here, a universal basic income is being considered by Canada's government. So they're looking at starting with a report, seeing this thing can be done, and then moving on to actually implementing this thing. It's actually being talked about in their parliament. And when we look at the WEF, this was one of their things. Their big thing was COVID. They had all these ideas. They had these agendas they wanted to put through. But when COVID happened, they seized on the opportunity. And Klaus Schwab was not shy about saying how great of an opportunity that was. So you start seeing headlines like this. Universal basic income is the answer to the inequalities exposed by COVID-19. That's on the WEF's website. So luckily in America, the idea of this universal basic income probably won't happen, because in America during COVID, we had all this relief, billions of dollars in relief funds. So a lot of people that lost their jobs or whose employment was cut or whatever the case may be, they received some benefits from the government. So that was great. But unfortunately, we're starting to see headlines like this. Cyber fraud rings in China and other U.S. adversaries stole billions in pandemic relief funds, Congress hears. It says anti-waste and fraud controls were so lax on trillions of dollars being spent by federal and state government agencies on COVID-19 pandemic relief benefits that as much as half of those funds actually went to entities in China, Russia, and other U.S. adversarial nations, a congressional panel was told on Thursday. Data on this is still being evaluated, but there are some estimates that half the pandemic unemployment assistance fraud went to adversarial nations, said Linda Miller during testimony on October 19th before the Oversight Subcommittee on the House Ways and Means Committee. So what are we talking about here? How much money is this? Well, if you go to the government's own website where they talk about how much this pandemic employment programs paid out, you can see this really simple chart here. And there's 3 color-coded lines. And those are the 3 different stimulus packages that were given to people. And if you add those up, it's about $653 billion. So we're talking, I mean, if we're meant to believe half of this was taken, we're talking north of $300 billion has been lost to other nations. This is a story that just broke. So this is something we're going to be covering. But in America, that doesn't bode well for our economy. So we really have to keep an eye on this and demand some accountability if it indeed shows that this half of these funds are gone.
You know, I think about this concept, Jeffrey, and, you know, I actually had a debate with a friend of mine. A lot of people know I grew up progressive liberal. It's amazing when you look back and talk to some of these friends you haven't spoken to for a while, and they're like down with universal basic income. And for me, I'll be honest, I don't know if I'm going to piss somebody off out in the audience, but you're taking away just like the most basic instinct, which is survival, right? You're taking away this idea that, the self-preservation instinct to survive. And I think back when I was getting started, I was flat broke. There was days I could only afford 2 pieces of pizza, not knowing where it's going to, but boy, did that make me go out and look for that job. Made me realize that I had to work harder at my dream. And it also makes you realize what you can survive, right? Like that, your own human resilience goes through those moments. I know my kids are going to have those moments. I want them to know that you will feel like your whole world is crashing in on you, but on the other side of that will be the recognition that you didn't crash, that you did survive, that you're a spectacular being, and there's so much you can handle, more than you realize. And if you take that away and you put a giant bubble wrap around everything in our lives so that my basic income is taken care of, I think you're going to have 99% of the world sitting on their couches playing video games and eating pizza and not doing anything. I just can't imagine what that world looks like. Sure, and the friend I was talking to is a talented musician, and so I know during COVID, while he was catching a check, he was writing songs and continuing to sort of do that work. I said, but you're an artist. Other people that don't have a muse or something they actually care about that gets up in the morning, what does that society turn into? There's just no reason to get up. They don't have a reason to survive because that's taken care of. I just think you destroy the fabric of America and the heart and soul of the human experience. That's my own opinion. That's what we kind of do on this show sometimes. So there it is. I have no scientific background on that. I can't give you peer-reviewed science. That's just my opinion.
One thing we can say is trust in governments is really at an all-time low, and in public health as well after the COVID response. So a lot of people aren't really really excited to trust their way of making a living or their currency of life with governments when we saw so many strings attached during the last 3 years to even live in society. So another thing, really the key pillar for the World Economic Forum after COVID was artificial intelligence. And this idea of this fourth industrial revolution where we're going to merge with machines and it's going to be great. And Klaus Schwab says this and he's licking his lips. He's so excited. It's happening already. You can't stop it. It's happening so fast. It's going to be upon us before we even know it. And you have Yuval Harari. He is the WF contributor. He's a historian. He's said things in the past like computers will make humans redundant and we can just keep them happy with drugs and computer games because we're just going to have surplus humans, really anti-human kind of comments. However, you saw this headline now recently. He's saying stuff like this. Sapiens author Yuval Noah Harari says AI could wipe out humanity. So he's far from on team humanity at this point, but he's saying like, look, there might be a problem here. And why is this a problem? Because I thought AI was supposed to make our lives great, and we have cities that are being built upon this. Here's a headline: smart grids to dominate smart city spending through 2026. So we have all of these cities that are really just going directly to the smart grid, being informed in real time with AI computer technology, so data-driven life. So people they say it's to make life easier, but you have centralized control with all of this technology, and everything becomes push button, flip of switch with people's lives. And
it's amazing when I look at this, Jeffrey, and you think, they're building these smart cities where everything's AI, everything's talking to each other. And at the same time, they're, sitting down with Elon Musk, or even Noah Harari is sitting there saying, they're going to be the end of us. Well, they certainly are if we're going to move into these smart cities and leave the country and leave our farms and, have factory meats made by computers and sitting where our whole lives are hanging in AI's balance. You're putting us right in harm's way. I mean, truly, what is AI going to do to, your average person out living in a cabin somewhere or, in a rural space where none of this really affects us? I mean, they're trying to get us located as though they want us to have this issue. And by the way, can you imagine if you're on universal basic income and all of a sudden the AI, computer banking systems that are now running your government go, wait a minute, how much are we spending on these useless humans? And then what does AI do? I'll tell you where they're going to start. If they start taking over the world, certainly on those people that just sit around eating pizza and playing video games.
Then there's so many scenarios that we can talk about where this would be a problem. In the U.S., here are the 10 cities that are ready for what's called a smart city future. And there's a little graph here. Number one's Austin, Texas. Then you got Los Angeles, California, Seattle, San Francisco, Atlanta, all the way down the line. And these are the ones really you should be watching out for at first. But is it, the idea is we move to this AI because it's net zero future. It's going to rapidly shift this. But is it really greener? Because that's what we're being sold on. It's better for the environment. Well, a new study just came out, and here's the headline. AI, artificial intelligence, on track to gobble up as much energy as a country, study finds. So now we're at an impasse, WEF, because you want a net zero future, and you want to accomplish it through AI, but your AI is doing the opposite of moving towards a net zero future. You're trying to reduce the output of carbon for countries, meanwhile creating a country of carbon with the AI build out. So this is becoming a big mess for this agenda. There's a lot of contradictions here, but one of the things is clear. The WEF, they did push for the mandatory vaccination during COVID, public health, along with the Gates Foundation and WHO. And one of the co-founders of the WEF, there was Klaus Schwab, and then there's Hussein Nejati. His son, Pascal Nejati, has just come out and really made a strong call for justice. Take a listen.
Geneva looks beautiful, is beautiful. It has a lake, it has this shadow. It's very peaceful, but there is a dark side to it. Everything evil in the world related to democide, unfortunately, comes from Geneva. You have WHO in Geneva, you have Gavi, then you have the WEF, the World Economic Forum, which my father was a co-founder and left Klaus Schwab out of disgust in the early 80s, that has diplomatic immunity. I, as a Swiss citizen, right here now, declare that the WEF is not eligible anymore for diplomatic immunity. I call on the Swiss authorities and security to arrest those people immediately. Why? The WEF, WHO, Gavi, Big Pharma, Big Tech, Bill Gates, all advocated a global humanity injection by a bioweapon injecting nanolipids into 5.7 billion people. And we Swiss are hosting them? That's terrible. We cannot tolerate any entity that promotes poison to be injected into humanity. But you have done it. I'm the victim, I'm dying from it. And my mother too. It's a democide, and you'll be judged. It will be corrected in the name of humanity.
Wow.
These are strong words. These are
Yeah.
strong words. And is Mr. Najati alone? Of course he's not.